My first question is to Zafar Hilali, former Pakistan ambassador to the US. Mr. Hilali, with all respect, what's the idea? Is the idea to provoke India to respond before Obama lands here? Is that the idea?
Well, it doesn't take much to provoke you, does it? I mean, as soon as there's a shot fired and you say that it's all Pakistan's fault, well, you know, we have, as you know, over the past, you have yourself acknowledged that infiltration, the fact that we are not any longer involved in any uprising in Kashmir, which was made clear over the last few months. So why is it now that you think that we are suddenly going back on a policy which we have deliberately adopted only to highlight the Kashmir dispute? The Kashmir dispute is not highlighted by Pakistani firing. The Kashmir dispute is highlighted by what you do about two unarmed Kashmiris in Kashmir.
Mr. Hilali, there are 3 ceasefire violations. Let's get straight to the point. Let's not obfuscate the issue. 3 ceasefire violations in 24 hours. 7 ceasefire violations in a month. Now, in 2006, the whole year there were 3 violations. Here in a week, in a day, 24 hours, there are 3 violations. That's desperation.
Yeah, but you see, that's your side of the story. I haven't heard our side of the story. If I was and it was unconvincing, I would freely admit it. But I haven't heard our side of the story. All I know is that 2 weeks ago, a Pakistani soldier was shot dead across the ceasefire line. Now, I mean, what does that mean?
There's a history to it.
These incidents take place, they're regrettable. Well, there's a history. You write that history and you read it and then you think that's the real history.
No,
I think that we should be objective about these things.
The history, with all respect again, is that on 28th March 2000, Pakistan backed killers in the most cold-blooded fashion when Clinton was just flying into India, carried out the Chittisinghpura massacre of 36 Sikhs in the Anantnag district of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, whose interests Pakistan claims to espouse. So that's the real history we are talking about. KC Singh, I want KC Singh to respond to that. Is there a pattern you're seeing here, KC?
Firstly, Arnab, there is a pattern. Secondly, this time the snows have come a bit early in Kashmir. And normally when the snow is coming in and the upper passes are closing, there is an anxiety to push people in because you are afraid that then after that winter sets in. And the civil disturbance which has been taking place in Kashmir desperately needs an infusion of blood. We have interlocutors there. We have people talking to them. Yes, and they also want to bring focus back. But I would also recommend to Mr. Hilali to refer to Bob Woodward's book called Obama's Wars, which time and again it quotes General Kayani as saying that his entire policy is India-centric. You don't have to. Now, this is a movement away from General Musharraf. The Pakistani army has been behaving differently. Ceasefire violations have increased ever since General Kayani has come in. So this is Pakistani army going back to their default position. They are not at the position where General Musharraf had taken them.
Okay, Mr. Hilali, you want to quickly rebut? I give you the right to rebut because that was a specific reference to you. You want to rebut KC Singh there?
Do you know, all I can say is that when Kiani says that he's India-centric, Musharraf from London is now saying that he too is India-centric. The fact of the matter is that all 63 years of our existence, the biggest threat that we feel we face is from India. You're talking about army men who are supposed to guard the country. What are they supposed to do when the biggest threat is with India? Are they supposed to say, no, we are not bothered about it?
You know, the real... Okay, I get in General Patankar here, who has great experience as the head of the 15 Corps. Are you seeing a pattern here? Because some people say, General Patankar, at this time of the year, this is unusual.
Yes, no, it's a little early, but I think Casey has touched upon this point, that climatically, right now, the anticipation is that the passes are likely to close earlier this year. So and Pakistani army likes to believe that they are the ones who are controlling the temperature valve on the other side, and therefore they can raise it and lower it at their will. So this particular thing is part of the pattern, there is no doubt about that. The other thing that my own conjecture is that although the firing has taken place in the Poonch-Rajouri area, the infiltration may not necessarily happen through those areas. this may be a distraction. The infiltration may still come through the valley, into the valley, because my own conjecture is that soon after this, you will find that there is a large group that has infiltrated with a view to carrying out a major strike within the valley. That would be a greater impact causing event rather than the ceasefire violations, which are part of the pattern. I agree entirely.
No, that is the real fear, and that is the fear, Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmad. That is the fear, because Indians have not forgotten Kaluchak either. Christina Rocca was in India. I think it happened in May 2002. And, 31 innocent tourists were killed in simple attention-grabbing tactic, again sponsored by Pakistan, during Christina Rocca's visit. So there's a pattern, and India is worried about that pattern. Dr. Ahmad.
Well, you see, let's not reach conclusions. Your questions are quite loaded, and they reflect actually a particular opinion. You see, the problem in debates in which there are participants from Pakistan or India is that the Pakistanis traditionally are articulating the Pakistani official point of view, and the Indian analysts are articulating their own official point of view. If there is truth, it is, I think, somewhere between that. You refer to the massacre of Sikhs during President Clinton's visit to South Asia, but I think the investigations carried out by Indian agencies themselves proved that the organizations who were blamed for that initially was not the case. Even in the present case, and we have to understand, there are a couple of important qualitative shifts which have taken place. Number one, the very forces which, say, Pakistani security apparatus was backing back in the 1990s may have turned against it in the last 8 years of the war on terror. And I think we should consider the possibility of this shift taking place at least in the South Asian or peculiar Pakistani context.
Well,
Number two, as Mr. Hilali pointed out, as Mr. Hilali also pointed out, you see, in the last few months in the valley of Kashmir, I think there is a popular uprising led by teenagers, and the causes are actually discussed extensively by several people writing or expressing themselves in Indian media itself.
Dr. Ahmad, surely Pakistan is aware that has completely lulled. There is a political process which is on, there is an interlocutors process which is on, there is an engagement process which is on. And that brings me to the point. Let me get in Maruf, our last participant. I'm coming back to you. Not cutting you short, Mr. Dr. Ahmad. I'm coming to you. What is the reason for this distrust and the worry, Maruf? Pakistan is saying things have changed.
Ornab, there are, as always, there are several points of view. But really what we need to understand, firstly, there is no serious connect, at least in the Indian mind, between the firing on the LOC and the uprising of stone throwers in the valley. The valley issue was something internal, badly managed by the current government in Srinagar. As far as firing on the LOC is concerned, there are 3 or 4 aspects. Mr. K.C. Singh and General Patankar have brought them out. One is, of course, clearly to divert attention of the Obama administration from larger issues which they are trying to work out with India onto bringing Kashmir again on the forefront of the discussion table. But equally important is a factor, as you've alluded to, that General Kayani has repeatedly cited the Indian threat. Why? The most recent visit by General Kayani and their Foreign Minister Qureshi to the US was not able to give to the Americans what they want is a greater Pakistani involvement, regardless of the assertions of Hillary Clinton, but a greater Pakistani involvement in America's war on terror, for which America is paying Pakistan a considerable amount of money. Pakistan continues to cite the fact that the Indian threat is intact, and bringing the issue in the forefront when Obama is going to be back is clearly going to both serve Pakistan's 2 focused agendas. One is Kashmir, they want to continue to internationalize the dispute, and secondly the Indian military aspect, that India is the one which is aggravating the situation. But you know, the sad part of the whole exercise is that the ceasefire in the valley had held for quite some time, We were building a trust between the two countries,
Right.
which, as Manmohan Singh and Prime Minister Jilani have referred to, the trust deficit. We go back to square one the moment the ceasefire is set aside and the line of control becomes explosive.
But